The scent of blood, hers, fresh and warm, hit Draeven Falkren the moment his boots touched the rain-slicked cobblestones of the warehouse district, and every predatory instinct he'd honed over 6 centuries roared to life. He shouldn't have been here at all. The port district was beneath a king's notice, a tangle of rust and poverty where humans scratched out their desperate existences far from the glittering vampire courts hidden beneath the city's ancient foundations. But his spy master had whispered rumors of trafficking, of his own kind preying on mortals in ways that violated every blood law he'd spent 300 years enforcing, and Draven had never been the sort of king to sit on a throne while his laws were broken in the streets above. Now he was glad he'd come. The woman's heartbeat called to him like a drum, fast and terrified, and he moved through the shadows between the shipping containers and stacked barrels with the fluid grace of smoke. His white hair, pulled back in a severe knot, caught the dim light from a single flickering street lamp. His cloak, black as a starless night and lined with crimson silk, swept behind him without a sound. There, between the barrels. He could see her now, a small figure pressed into the narrow gap, trying to make herself invisible. Her clothes were soaked through from the rain, plastered to a thin frame that shook with cold and fear. Dark hair stuck to her face in wet tangles. She had one hand pressed to her side, and blood, that intoxicating, maddening blood, seeped between her fingers. She saw him. Her eyes went wide, and Draven watched the terror bloom across her face. Of course she was afraid. He knew what he looked like. Tall and imposing, skin pale as marble, eyes that gleamed silver in the darkness. A predator finding wounded prey. "Please," she whispered. The word was barely audible over the rain. "Please, I can't." Draven held up one hand, palm out, and stopped several feet away. "Peace," he said, and was surprised by the gentleness in his own voice. "I mean you no harm." She laughed, a broken, hysterical sound. "You're one of them. You're a—" She couldn't even say the word. "Vampire," Draven finished for her. "Yes, but not all of us are the same, any more than all humans are identical." He studied her carefully, noting the pallor of her skin, the way she swayed even as she pressed herself against the barrel. "You're hurt, badly. You'll bleed out if that wound isn't treated." "Better that than—" She cut herself off, but her meaning was clear. "Than being fed upon." Draven's jaw tightened. "Who did this to you?" She shook her head, the movement sluggish. "Don't know. Was working late. Heard screaming from the alley behind the restaurant. When I went to look, there were 3 of them, white hair like yours. They were draining someone, a man, and when I tried to run, one of them—" Her voice broke. He laughed, said I looked delicious. Rage, cold and sharp as a blade, sliced through Draven's chest. "Describe them. Why?" Her eyes were starting to glaze, shock setting in. "So you can find them and finish what they started?" "So I can execute them for breaking my laws," Draven said flatly. "I am Draeven Falkren, king of the Nightborn, and feeding from an unwilling human is a crime punishable by permanent death in my realm." She stared at him. "You're lying." "I am many things," Draven said, "but a liar is not one of them." He took a slow step forward, moving as non-threateningly as a creature like him could manage. "You're dying. Your wound needs to be sealed and treated, and you've lost too much blood to survive without intervention. I can help you. I can take you somewhere safe, somewhere those rogues will never find you. Or I can leave you here to bleed out in the rain. Your choice." "Some choice," she whispered, but her eyes were starting to close. Draven moved then, closing the distance in a blur of supernatural speed. He caught her as she collapsed, and the scent of her blood nearly overwhelmed him. This close, it was almost unbearable sweet and rich, and calling to every instinct that whispered, "Drink, feed, take." He was ancient and powerful, his control honed over centuries, but even he felt the pull. He crushed it ruthlessly. She was under his protection now, whether she knew it or not. "Stay with me," he murmured, shifting her carefully in his arms. She was lighter than she should be, all sharp angles and delicate bones. When had she last eaten a proper meal? "What's your name?" "Ophelia," she breathed. Ophelia Oakes. Well, Ophelia Oakes, Draven said, unwrapping his cloak one-handed and draping it around her shivering form. The fabric was warm from his body, spelled to retain heat even in the coldest nights. You're safe now. I swear it. She made a small sound, something between a sob and a laugh. Funny. I don't feel safe. You will, he promised, and carried her out of the alley into the rain. The entrance to the Nightborn realm was 3 blocks away, hidden behind the facade of an abandoned church. Draven moved through the shadows with predatory speed, using the darkness and the rain as cover. The last thing he needed was some human with a camera phone capturing footage of a white-haired man carrying an unconscious woman through the streets. His kind had stayed hidden for centuries by being cautious, and while he could easily have any such evidence destroyed, it was simpler to avoid the situation entirely. Ophelia stirred against his chest as he slipped through the church's broken doors. Where? Somewhere safe, he repeated. Don't struggle. You'll reopen your wound. Don't want to go underground, she mumbled, and he realized with a start that she was more aware than he'd thought. Dark down there. Scary. The Nightborn realm is many things, Draven said, reaching the altar and pressing his hand against the stone in a specific pattern. But dark is not one of them. We may be vampires, Miss Oakes, but we appreciate beauty as much as any creature. The altar swung inward, revealing a spiral staircase that glowed with soft golden light. See? She blinked at the warm illumination. Oh. Indeed. He started down the stairs, and the altar sealed shut behind them with a soft click. The Nightborn realm sprawled beneath the modern city like a secret kingdom, and in truth, that was exactly what it was. Draven's ancestors had carved it from stone and magic 500 years ago, creating a haven where his kind could live freely without fear of hunters or sunlight. High vaulted ceilings arched overhead, supported by columns of white marble veined with gold. Elaborate chandeliers hung from iron chains, their crystals casting rainbow patterns across the walls. The main thoroughfare was wide enough for carriages, and indeed, Draven could see several passing by, because while they lived beneath the earth, the Nightborn refused to sacrifice elegance or comfort. It's beautiful, Ophelia whispered. Her eyes were wide despite her obvious pain. Thank you. Draven felt an unexpected surge of pride. We've spent centuries perfecting it. He turned down a side corridor, heading toward the royal quarters. His palace, and yes, he insisted on calling it a palace even though it was underground, occupied the eastern section of the realm, its halls lined with tapestries and paintings collected over centuries of existence. Guards in silver armor snapped to attention as he passed, their eyes widening as they saw the bleeding human in his arms. My lord, one of them said, shock clear in his voice. Do you require? Send for Serena, Draven ordered. Tell her to bring her medical supplies to my private chambers immediately, and summon Lucian. I need my spy master. At once, your majesty. The guard bowed and disappeared down a side passage. Serena? Ophelia asked faintly. My healer, Draven explained. She's kept me alive through 3 assassination attempts, 2 wars, and 1 very unfortunate incident involving poisoned blood. If anyone can treat your wound, it's her. Poisoned blood? Long story, involving a rival king, a foolish wager, and a human who thought himself clever. Draven shouldered open the door to his chambers, grateful that he'd left them unlocked. The rival king is dead now, if you're curious. The human lived. I actually rather liked him. Ophelia made a sound that might have been a laugh. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Something from a horror movie, all blood and screaming. How disappointing for you, Draven said dryly. He laid her carefully on the sofa near the fireplace, then snapped his fingers. Flames roared to life in the hearth, immediately beginning to warm the room. I prefer to think of myself as cultured, refined, a patron of the arts. Who executes people who break his laws? Ophelia pointed out. Well, yes. Draven knelt beside the sofa, examining her wound with a critical eye. The cut was deep, likely from a knife or a claw. It would need stitches at minimum. But only people who deserve it. I'm not a monster, Miss Oakes, merely a king doing his best to maintain order among a rather unruly population. Are all vampires like you? Handsome, charming, devastatingly intelligent? This time she definitely laughed, though it ended in a wince. I was going to say talkative. Ah, Draven found himself smiling. No, most of my kind are rather serious. I'm told I have an irritating habit of levity even in dire situations. My counselors complain about it constantly. Why? Why do they complain, or why do I do it? The second one. Draven considered the question. Because I've lived for 600 years, Miss Oakes. If I spent every moment being grim and serious, I'd have gone mad centuries ago. Humor helps, even when everything else is terrible. She looked at him for a long moment, her hazel eyes searching his face. You really meant it, didn't you? About executing those vampires. Every word. His voice hardened. What they did attacking humans, feeding without consent, leaving you to bleed out in an alley, it violates every principle I've built my rule upon. We are predators, yes, but we are not animals. There are rules, blood laws, and those who break them answer to me. But how do you usually get blood, if not by... She gestured vaguely. By hunting. Draven shook his head. We have donors, humans who consent to feed us, in exchange for payment and protection. It's all regulated, all carefully controlled. No one is forced, no one is harmed beyond the initial bite, and healing magic ensures they recover quickly. Some donors have been with us for years. It's a symbiotic relationship. I had no idea, Ophelia said softly. Most humans don't. We prefer it that way. The less your kind knows about us, the safer we all are. He heard footsteps in the corridor and stood. That will be Serena. The healer swept into the room a moment later, her white hair braided in an intricate crown, her pale hands already reaching for Ophelia. Serena was old, nearly as old as Draven himself, and her healing skills were legendary among their kind. A human, she said, her voice musical and efficient, with a knife wound from the smell. Move aside, my lord. Let me work. Draven stepped back, watching as Serena's hands glowed with soft silver light. The healer's magic was different from combat magic, gentler, more precise. He'd seen her reattach severed limbs and cure poisons that should have been fatal. A simple stab wound should be nothing. Ophelia gasped as the light touched her skin. What? Hush, Serena said, not unkindly. I'm sealing the wound. It will feel strange, but it won't hurt. His Majesty was right to bring you here. Another 10 minutes and you'd have been beyond even my help. Thank you, Ophelia whispered. Thank our king, Serena said, glancing at Draven with knowing eyes. He's the one who carried you through the rain. Quite the romantic gesture, if I do say so. It wasn't romantic, Draven said firmly. It was practical. She was dying. Of course, my lord. Serena's tone suggested she believed no such thing. And I suppose you wrapped her in your personal cloak for practical reasons as well? Draven became very interested in the tapestry on the far wall. She was cold. Ophelia looked between them, and despite her obvious exhaustion, there was a spark of amusement in her eyes. Do all vampire healers tease their kings? Only the ones who've known said king since he was a century old and still learning not to trip over his own cloak, Serena said serenely. There. Your wound is sealed. You'll have a scar, but you'll live, though you've lost quite a bit of blood. You'll need rest and proper food. I don't have anywhere to... Ophelia started, then stopped. Actually, I don't even know where I am. How do I get home from here? You don't, Draven said. Not yet. Her eyes widened. Are you keeping me prisoner? I'm keeping you safe, he corrected. Those rogues who attacked you, they marked you. I can smell it, the way they left their scent on you like a tag. They'll be looking for you. If you go home, they'll find you and finish what they started. So, what am I supposed to do? Live down here forever? No, just until I find them and deal with them. A few days at most. Draven moved to his desk and pulled out a sheet of paper. I'll need descriptions. Everything you remember. Height, distinguishing features, anything they said. Lucienne will use that information to track them down. And then? And then they die, Draven said simply. And you go home knowing you're safe. Ophelia was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she said, "What if I don't want to give you descriptions? What if I don't want their deaths on my conscience?" Draven turned to look at her. "They murdered someone in that alley. You said you heard screaming. They would have murdered you too if you hadn't run. And they'll do it again, to someone else, if I don't stop them. Is that what you want?" "No," she whispered. "But I'm not. I've never been involved in anything like this. I'm a waitress. I serve pasta and take orders and worry about paying my rent. I'm not supposed to be part of vampire politics." "You weren't," Draven agreed. "Until they dragged you into it. I'm sorry for that. But now that you're here, you have a choice. Help me stop them, or let them continue preying on innocents." She closed her eyes. "That's not fair." "No," he said gently. "It's not. But it's the truth." Serena had been watching the exchange in silence. Now she stood, gathering her supplies. "I'll leave you two to discuss this. But Miss Oakes, you should rest. Your body needs time to recover." She fixed Draven with a stern look. "Don't interrogate her all night, my lord. She's been through quite enough." "I'll be gentle," Draven promised. "See that you are." Serena swept out, leaving them alone. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Finally, Ophelia opened her eyes. One of them had a scar, right here. She traced a line down her left cheek. It was old, silvery white, and he wore rings on every finger. They clicked together when he moved. Draven began writing. "Good. What else?" "The one who cut me, he was tall. Taller than you even. And his eyes were red. Not silver like yours, but actually red. Like blood." Draven's hand stilled. "Red eyes? You're certain?" "Positive. Why? Is that important?" "It means he's a blood addict," Draven said grimly. "A vampire who's given up all control, who feeds constantly to maintain a high. It's a degenerative condition, illegal in my realm." He resumed writing. "That actually makes it easier. There can't be many blood addicts in the city. Lucian will be able to narrow down the search." "Who's Lucian?" "My spy master. He knows everything that happens in this city, above ground and below. If there's a blood addict killing humans in the Port District, he'll find him within 24 hours. As if summoned by his name, there was a knock at the door. Draven called, "Enter!" and Lucian stepped inside. The spy master was lean and sharp-featured, his white hair cut short, his silver eyes constantly moving and assessing. He took in Ophelia on the sofa with a single glance, then focused on Draven. "You summon me, my lord?" "I need you to find 3 rogues," Draven said, handing over the paper with Ophelia's descriptions. "They attacked this woman in the Port District tonight. One's a blood addict. They're hunting humans without consent and leaving bodies in alleys." Lucian's expression darkened as he read. "Blood addicts. Wonderful. Those are always so stable and reasonable." He looked at Ophelia. "You survived an encounter with 3 vampires. You're either very lucky or very clever." "Very fast," Ophelia said. "I ran." "Smart." Lucian tucked the paper into his coat. "I'll start the search immediately. If they're still in the city, I'll find them. What are your orders once I do?" "Bring them to me," Draven said. "Alive, if possible. I want to know if they're working alone or if there's something larger happening. And if they resist, then kill them and bring me their heads. But I'd prefer live prisoners for interrogation." Lucian bowed. "As you command, Your Majesty." He left as quietly as he'd arrived. Ophelia stared at the closed door. Does he always appear and disappear like that? Yes. It's unnerving even for me, and I've known him for 3 centuries. Draven returned to the sofa and sat in the chair across from her. "You should rest, like Serena said. I'll have rooms prepared for you." Rooms? Plural? You're a guest in my home, Draven said. I'm not going to stick you in a cell. You'll have a bedroom, a private bath, a sitting area, anything you need. I need to call my roommate, Ophelia said. She'll worry when I don't come home. I'll have a phone brought to you, though you'll need to be careful what you say. You can't tell her about... He gestured around them. All of this. I'll think of something. Ophelia pulled his cloak tighter around herself. Can I keep this? I'm still cold. Draven felt something strange flutter in his chest at the sight of her wrapped in his cloak, her small frame dwarfed by the heavy fabric. Of course, it's yours. Just for now, she clarified, until I can get my own clothes. I'll have something brought for you. What's your size? She told him, and he made a mental note to have Serena handle it. Fashion was not his strong suit, despite 6 centuries of life. He'd spent most of those centuries in either armor or formal courtwear, neither of which would be appropriate for Ophelia. Thank you, she said quietly, for saving me, even if this is all completely insane. You're welcome, Draven stood. I'll show you to your rooms. Can you walk? I think so. She rose slowly, testing her weight, and Draven was ready to catch her if she fell. But she stayed upright, though she kept one hand pressed to her side. Lead the way, Your Majesty. Draven, he said. When we're alone, you may call me Draven. She looked surprised. That's allowed? I'm the king. I make the rules. He opened the door and offered her his arm. Come, you need rest. The guest quarters were down the hall from his own chambers, close enough that he could reach her quickly if needed, but far enough to be proper. The rooms were elegant and comfortable, decorated in shades of cream and gold. A large bed dominated the bedroom, piled high with pillows and covered in soft linens. The bathroom had a deep tub and modern fixtures, proof that even underground the Nightborn embraced certain human innovations. This is incredible, Ophelia said, looking around in wonder. It's nicer than my apartment. I should hope so, Draven said. I've had centuries to perfect it. He moved to the wardrobe and opened it, pleased to find it already stocked with various clothing options. Serena must have anticipated his needs. There are clothes here. Nothing may fit perfectly, but they'll do until we can get something tailored for you. You don't have to do all this, Ophelia said. I'm nobody important. Draven turned to face her. You're under my protection. That makes you important. And more than that, you were hurt in my city, by my kind, while they violated my laws. That makes you my responsibility. He moved toward the door. Rest. Eat if you're hungry. There's a bell pull by the bed. Ring it and servants will bring you anything you need. I'll check on you in the morning. Wait, she said. He stopped. Why are you being so kind to me? Draven considered the question. In truth, he wasn't entirely sure himself. There was something about her the way she'd faced him in that alley despite her terror, the spark of humor in her eyes even when she was dying, the softness in her voice when she thanked him. Something that called to him in a way he hadn't felt in longer than he cared to remember, but he couldn't say that. Not when she'd just been through a trauma. Not when she was vulnerable and alone in a strange place. So instead he said, because it's the right thing to do. And left before she could ask anything else. The next morning, Draven found himself pacing his study like a caged wolf. He'd barely slept, not unusual for a vampire, who needed far less rest than humans, but his sleeplessness had less to do with his nature and more to do with the woman down the hall. He kept thinking about her, the way she'd looked wrapped in his cloak, all dark eyes and damp hair. The bravery it had taken for her to give him those descriptions, even knowing they'd lead to death. The soft sound of her laugh when Serena had teased him. You're being ridiculous, he told himself aloud. She's a human. She's under your protection. This is entirely inappropriate. But his thoughts refused to cooperate. A knock at the door rescued him from his spiraling. Enter! Serena swept in, carrying a tray. I thought you might want to bring Miss Oakes breakfast yourself. Draven eyed her suspiciously. Why would I do that? Because you're clearly interested in her, and I thought I'd help facilitate. Serena set the tray on his desk with a smile. Don't look at me like that, my lord. I've known you for 500 years. I can read you like an open book. There's nothing to read, Draven said firmly. I'm merely concerned for a guest's well-being. Of course, just like you were merely being practical when you wrapped her in your cloak. She was cold, and trembling between those barrels like a frightened rabbit, and you looked at her like she was the most precious thing you'd ever seen. Draven opened his mouth to deny it, then closed it again. Because Serena was right. When he'd seen Ophelia huddled in that alley, bleeding and terrified, something in him had shifted. Some instinct older and deeper than even his vampire nature had roared mine. Protect. Keep safe. It was absurd. He'd known her for less than 12 hours. It was also undeniable. Even if I were interested, he said carefully, it would be impossible. She's human. I'm a vampire king. There's no future there. Why not? Serena settled into a chair, clearly prepared for a long conversation. You wouldn't be the first of our kind to take a human partner. Your grandfather had a human consort for 40 years. And when she died, it nearly destroyed him. He spent a century in mourning, Serena. I was there. I saw what it did to him. But he also said those 40 years were the best of his long life, Serena countered. That loving her was worth the pain of losing her. Draven shook his head. I won't do that. I won't let myself care for someone I'll inevitably outlive by centuries. That's fear-talking, not wisdom. Perhaps, but it's kept me alive and sane for 600 years. Serena stood, moving to the door. Love isn't something you can logic your way out of, my lord. If it's real, it will happen whether you want it to or not. The only choice you have is whether to embrace it or push it away. She paused in the doorway. But I'd suggest getting to know her first before you make any grand declarations either way. Take her to breakfast. Talk to her. She's interesting, that one. Quick-witted and kind. You could do far worse. I'm not doing anything, Draven protested, but Serena had already left. He stared at the breakfast tray for a long moment, then sighed and picked it up. He was the king. He could bring a guest breakfast without it meaning anything significant. He knocked on Ophelia's door and heard a muffled, "Come in." She was sitting by the window, though it wasn't really a window, just an enchanted painting that showed a view of sunrise over mountains, and she'd changed into one of the dresses from the wardrobe. It was simple, a soft gray that complemented her coloring, and she'd braided her dark hair over one shoulder. You look better, Draven said, setting the tray on the small table. How are you feeling? Sore, confused, hungry. She eyed the tray. Is that for me? Unless you'd prefer I eat it, yes. She moved to the table and sat down, looking at the food with undisguised appreciation. There were eggs and toast, fresh fruit, pastries, and a pot of tea. This is way too much food. You need to rebuild your strength. Blood loss takes a toll. Ophelia picked up a fork and started on the eggs. Do you eat human food, or is it all blood all the time? We can eat human food, Draven said, taking the seat across from her. We enjoy it even. But it doesn't nourish us the way blood does. Think of it like... He paused, searching for an analogy. Like alcohol for humans, pleasant, but not sustaining. So you drink blood to survive and eat food for fun? Essentially, yes. She chewed thoughtfully. That must make dinner parties interesting. You have no idea. I once attended a formal banquet where the human courses lasted 4 hours. I thought I'd die of boredom before the blood service. Ophelia laughed, and Draven felt that strange flutter in his chest again. He liked making her laugh. Liked the way her whole face lit up when she smiled. Dangerous, whispered his common sense. Very dangerous. Tell me about yourself, he said, trying to focus on something safe. You said you're a waitress? At Marino's. It's an Italian place in the theater district. Good tips, terrible hours. She sipped her tea. I've been there for 2 years. Before that, I was finishing my degree. In what? Art history, which is a completely useless degree according to my parents, but I loved it. Her eyes went distant. I wanted to work in a museum, curate exhibitions, do research, but those jobs are impossible to get without connections or a graduate degree, and I can't afford grad school, so I wait tables and tell myself it's temporary. Is it? Draven asked. Temporary? I don't know anymore, she admitted. It's been 2 years. At what point does temporary become permanent? When you stop fighting for what you want, Draven said. I've seen centuries of humans pass through this world. The ones who regret their lives are always the ones who gave up on their dreams too early. Easy to say when you're an immortal vampire king. You have all the time in the world. I also spent 200 years fighting a war that nearly destroyed my realm, Draven said quietly. I know what it's like to feel trapped, Ophelia, to wonder if things will ever be different. But they can be, if you're willing to fight for it. She looked at him for a long moment. Why do you care? About my dreams, my life? I'm just a random human you saved. Because you're interesting, Draven said honestly. Because you sat in that alley bleeding and still managed to laugh at my jokes. Because you're braver than you think you are. He leaned forward. And because I think you deserve better than a life you've settled for. Color rose in her cheeks. You don't even know me. Then let me get to know you. You're going to be here for a few days anyway. We might as well pass the time pleasantly. Is this how vampire kings usually spend their time? Chatting with random humans? No, Draven admitted. Usually I'm dealing with council meetings, territorial disputes, and assassination attempts. This is far more enjoyable. She picked up a pastry, tearing off small pieces. Tell me about your life. What's it like being a vampire king? Exhausting, Draven said with feeling. I have 7 counselors, all of whom think they could rule better than me. I have rival vampire courts in 3 other cities, all looking for any sign of weakness they can exploit. I have human governments who suspect we exist but can't prove it, which means I spend half my time making sure we stay hidden. And I have my own people, thousands of them, all looking to me to keep them safe and fed and content. Do you ever regret it? Being king? Sometimes, he admitted. Usually when I'm sitting through a 6-hour council meeting about blood tax policies. But then something happens that reminds me why I do this. Someone I've protected thanks me. A law I passed makes life better for my people. A rogue vampire like the ones who hurt you gets stopped before they can do more harm. He met her eyes. The power isn't what matters. It's what you do with it. Ophelia was quiet, studying him with those hazel eyes. Finally, she said, You're not what I expected a vampire king to be. What did you expect? Someone cruel, cold, sitting on a throne of bones and drinking from golden goblets or something. Draven laughed. I do have a throne, but it's quite comfortable and free of bones, and I prefer crystal to gold. But yes, I take your point. Most stories about my kind aren't exactly flattering. Are any of them true? Some. We are predators. We do need blood to survive. Sunlight will kill us, as will a stake through the heart or decapitation. Silver burns us, though not fatally. Garlic just smells bad, and crosses are meaningless unless wielded by someone with true faith. He ticked off points on his fingers. We're stronger and faster than humans. We live for centuries if we're not killed. We can heal from almost any wound, given enough blood and time. And yes, we have the ability to compel humans, though I've made that illegal except in self-defense. Compel? Mind control, essentially. We can make humans do what we want, make them forget things, plant suggestions in their thoughts. It's a dangerous power, and in the wrong hands, it becomes slavery. His voice hardened. That's why it's forbidden in my realm. Anyone caught compelling a human without just cause faces execution. You have a lot of rules, Ophelia observed, because without rules we become monsters. Real ones. Draven stood, moving to the painted window.
I've lived long enough to see what happens when vampires give in to their darkest impulses. Cities burned, populations slaughtered, other vampires hunting us down like animals. We survive by being civilized, by restraining our nature and living by laws. That's what separates me from the creatures who hurt you. He felt her come up beside him.
She was so small compared to him, barely reaching his shoulder. fragile and warm and alive in a way that made his chest ache. "Thank you," she said softly, "for having those rules, for being the kind of king who enforces them. You already thanked me last night. I'm thanking you again." She smiled up at him. "Besides, you did wrap me in your cloak. That deserves at least 2 thank yous." "Only 2?" Draven found himself smiling back. "I carried you through the rain as well. Surely that's worth a 3rd. "Don't push your luck, Your Majesty." "Draven," he corrected. "I told you to call me Draven when we're alone." "Draven," she repeated, and the sound of his name in her voice sent a thrill down his spine. "That's an unusual name. What does it mean?" "Hunter," he said. "In the old language. My father was a warrior king. He wanted me to be strong." "Did it work?" "I'm still alive after 600 years. I'd say it worked reasonably well." She laughed again, and Draven realized with a start that he'd been standing here talking with her for over an hour. Time had slipped away without his noticing, caught up in the pleasure of her company. "I should let you rest," he said reluctantly. "You're still recovering." "I feel fine," Ophelia protested. "Actually, I feel better than fine. Your healer is some kind of miracle worker." "Serena is the best, but that doesn't mean you should push yourself." Draven moved toward the door. "I have some things to attend to, council business, but I'll check on you later if that's acceptable. Of course, this is your home. You don't need my permission." "Perhaps not, but I'd prefer to have it anyway." He left before he could do something foolish, like stay and talk with her for the rest of the day. He had responsibilities, a realm to run, rogues to find. He absolutely could not spend all his time mooning over a human woman, no matter how much he wanted to. Lucian was waiting in his study when Draven returned, lounging in a chair with the casual grace of a cat. "Found them," the spy master announced without preamble. Draven's pulse quickened. "Already? You said one was a blood addict. There are only 3 known addicts in the city, and only one matches the descriptions your human provided. His name is Vane. He's been running with 2 others' brothers named Kale and Dorian. They've been operating out of an abandoned cannery in the Port District for the past month." "Operating how?" "Hunting humans for sport, near as I can tell. They've killed at least 7 that I've found evidence of. Probably more." Lucian's expression was grim. "They're not drinking for survival. They're doing it for the thrill, the cruelty." Rage, cold and sharp, filled Draven's chest. "Where are they now?" "Still at the cannery. I have people watching it. They won't move without us knowing." "Good." Draven moved to his weapon rack and selected a sword. The blade was ancient, forged in the same century he was born, and it had ended more vampire lives than he cared to count. "Gather a squad. We're going in tonight." "You're leading the assault personally?" Lucian raised an eyebrow. "That's unusual. They attacked someone under my protection. That makes it personal." "Ah." Understanding flickered across Lucian's face. "The human. You like her." "I'm protecting her," Draven said firmly. "That's all. Of course, my lord, which is why you personally brought her breakfast this morning and spent an hour in her rooms. Are you spying on me now?" "I'm your spy master. I spy on everyone." Lucian stood. "For what it's worth, I approve. She seems clever and brave to survive an encounter with 3 rogues. Those are good qualities in a potential consort." "She's not going to be my consort," Draven said, buckling on his sword belt. "She's a guest. Nothing more." "Whatever you say, my lord." Lucian's tone suggested he believed not a word of it. "I'll have the squad ready within the hour. Meet us at the north gate." He left, and Draven was alone with his thoughts again. They were dangerous thoughts, circling endlessly around a woman with dark hair and warm eyes, a woman who made him laugh and made him want things he'd sworn to never want again. "Focus," he told himself. "Deal with the rogues first. Worry about impossible feelings later." But as he made his way to the north gate, he couldn't help stopping by Ophelia's rooms one more time. She answered his knock with a smile. "Back already? I thought you had council business." "I do. But I wanted to let you know Lucian found them, the vampires who attacked you. We're moving against them tonight." Her smile faded. "Oh, you'll be safe here," Draven assured her. "I'm leaving guards and the realm is sealed. No one can get in without my permission." "I'm not worried about me," Ophelia said. "I'm worried about you." The words hit him like a physical blow. "Me? You're going to fight 3 vampires. What if you get hurt?" "I'm the Vampire King," Draven said, trying for levity even as warmth spread through his chest. "I've survived 6 centuries and 3 wars. 3 rogues don't worry me." "Still." She stepped closer, and Draven caught the scent of her soap and something sweet, uniquely her. "Be careful, please. For you?" The words slipped out before he could stop them. "Always." Their eyes met, and Draven felt the world narrow to just the 2 of them. She was so close he could hear her heartbeat, see the pulse fluttering in her throat. It would be so easy to close the distance, too. He stepped back. "I should go. The squad will be waiting." "Draven," she said, and he stopped. "Come back safe." "I will," he promised. "I swear it." And then he left before he could do something foolish like kiss her goodbye. The cannery was exactly as grim as Draven expected, a hulking structure of rust and shadows, surrounded by chain-link fence and warning signs. He and his squad approached from the north, moving in perfect silence through the darkness. Lucian raised a hand and they stopped. "They're inside. 2nd floor, eastern corner, 3 heat signatures. Exits? Main entrance, loading dock on the south side, and a fire escape on the west. I have people covering all 3. Draven nodded. "No one escapes. If they run, kill them. But I want at least 1 alive for questioning. Understood?" His squad murmured agreement. They were all experienced warriors, veterans of the territorial wars. They knew their jobs. "Move in." They flowed through the darkness like smoke, spreading out to cover the entrances. Draven took the main door, Lucian at his side. The door was locked, but a casual twist of supernatural strength snapped the chain. Inside, the cannery was a maze of rusted equipment and shadows. The smell hit him immediately, blood, old and new, mixed with decay. His lip curled. This place was a slaughterhouse. "Upstairs," Lucian whispered, pointing to a metal staircase. They climbed in silence. Draven's hand rested on his sword hilt, every sense alert. He could hear voices now, casual conversation punctuated by laughter. "Saw the look on her face when I cut her. Should have stayed to watch her bleed out. We can always find her later. Marked her good enough." Draven's vision went red. He kicked in the door with enough force to send it flying off its hinges. 3 vampires whirled to face him. Draven recognized the descriptions immediately. The tall one with red eyes must be Vane, the blood addict. The one with rings was Kale. The third, Dorian, had the look of someone used to violence. "Well, well," Vane said, grinning to show fangs stained dark. "Company. We weren't expecting visitors." "Draeven Falkren," Kyle said, recognition dawning. "The Vampire King. What brings you to our humble establishment?" "Justice," Draven said coldly. He drew his sword. "You violated the blood laws, killed humans without consent, left a trail of bodies across my city, and you attacked someone under my protection." "That little waitress?" Vane laughed. "She was fun. Fast, too. Almost got away." "Almost," Draven agreed. "But she did get away. Long enough to describe you to me. Long enough for me to find you." He raised his sword. "You're under arrest for murder and violation of the blood laws. Submit peacefully, and you'll face trial. Resist, and you die here." "You think you can take all 3 of us?" Dorian moved into a fighting stance. "Even a king can bleed." "I've fought armies," Draven said. 3 rogues don't concern me." They attacked as one. Dorian came in low, going for his legs. Kale went high, claws extended. Vane circled, looking for an opening. Draven moved like lightning. His sword flashed out, catching Dorian across the chest and sending him stumbling back with a scream. He pivoted, blocking Kale's claws with the flat of his blade, then slammed his fist into the vampire's face. Bone crunched. Kyle went down. Vayne was faster, blood maddened and deadly. His claws raked across Draven's shoulder, drawing blood. Pain flared, sharp and bright. Draven hissed and spun, his sword singing through the air. Vayne dodged, but not fast enough. The blade caught him across the ribs, cutting deep. He staggered back, eyes wide. "You're outmatched," Draven said. Behind him, he could hear his squad dealing with Kale and Dorian. "Surrender!" "Never," Vayne snarled. He lunged again, all feral rage and desperation. Draven sidestepped and brought his sword down in a perfect arc. The blade took Vayne's head cleanly from his shoulders. The body collapsed, already beginning to decay. Within seconds it was nothing but ash and bone. Silence fell. Draven turned to find Kale and Dorian on their knees, held by his warriors. Both were bloody and beaten, their defiance replaced by fear. "Take them to the cells," Draven ordered. "I want full confessions. Names of anyone they worked with. Details of every murder. Everything." "Yes, my lord." As his squad hauled the prisoners away, Lucian moved to Draven's side. "You're injured." "It's nothing." But the wound on his shoulder burned. Vayne's claws had been deep. "Serena will want to look at it. After. First, I want this place searched. Find evidence of their crimes. I want a full accounting of their victims." Lucien nodded and began directing the search. Draven stood in the center of the carnage, feeling the weight of 600 years settling on his shoulders. This was what being king meant: violence and justice, blood and law, making the hard choices that kept his people safe. But as he headed back to the Nightborn realm, all he could think about was Ophelia. About the promise he'd made to come back safe. About the way she'd looked at him when he said he had to go. He found her in her rooms, curled up in a chair with a book. She looked up when he entered, and relief flooded her face. "You're back." Then she saw the blood on his shoulder. "You're hurt." "It's nothing," he said again. "Let me see." She was on her feet, moving toward him with concern written across her features. "Sit down. Where's your healer?" "I'm fine, Ophelia." "Sit down." There was steel in her voice, unexpected and compelling. Draven found himself obeying, sinking into a chair. She knelt beside him, examining the wound with gentle fingers. "This is deep. It needs to be treated. It will heal on its own, given time." "How much time?" "A few days, maybe a week." "That's too long." She stood and moved to the door, yanking it open. A guard stood outside, and Ophelia said firmly, "Get the healer, now. Your king is injured." The guard's eyes widened, and he hurried off. Ophelia returned to Draven's side. "You didn't have to do that," Draven said. "Yes, I did. You went out there to protect me, to stop the vampires who hurt me. The least I can do is make sure you get proper medical attention." Her hands were shaking slightly. "When you didn't come back right away, I thought—" "I'm sorry," Draven said softly. "I should have sent word." "It's fine. You're here now. You're safe." She blinked rapidly, and Draven realized with a start that there were tears in her eyes. "Did you find them?" "Yes, one is dead. The other two are in my cells awaiting trial." "Good." The fierceness in her voice surprised him. "I hope they suffer for what they did." "They will answer for their crimes," Draven promised. "You have my word." Serena arrived moments later, taking one look at the wound and clicking her tongue. "Fighting rogues, my lord, at your age?" "I'm 600, not 6,000, Draven protested. "I'm hardly decrepit." "You're bleeding all over your shirt." Serena's hands glowed with silver light as she worked. "Miss Oakes was right to summon me." "See?" Ophelia said. "Even your healer agrees with me." Draven found himself caught between annoyance and amusement. "You two are ganging up on me." "Because you're being stubborn," Serena said. "Stay still. This will take a few minutes." Draven endured the healing in silence, watching Ophelia watch him. There was something in her eyes, some emotion he couldn't quite name. Concern, yes, but something deeper. something that made his chest feel tight and warm. "There," Serena said finally, sitting back. "Good as new. Try not to get clawed by any more rogues in the next few days, "I'll do my best," Draven said dryly. Serena left, and they were alone again. The silence stretched between them, charged with something Draven didn't want to examine too closely. "Thank you," he said finally, "for caring." "Of course I care," Ophelia said. "You saved my life, and you're—" She paused. "You're a good man, a good king. The world would be worse without you in it." "I'm not a man," Draven said. "I'm a vampire. You're both, and that's not a bad thing." She was still kneeling beside his chair, close enough to touch. Draven found his hand moving of its own accord, reaching up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. She didn't pull away. "Ophelia," he said, his voice rough. "I should tell you." "Don't," she whispered. "Not yet. I'm not ready to hear whatever you're going to say, not when I'm still trying to figure out what I'm feeling." "And what are you feeling?" "Confused, grateful, safe, for the first time in years." She met his eyes. "And something else. Something I don't have a name for yet." Draven's hand cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing across her skin. She was so warm, so alive. Everything he wasn't. "I've lived for 6 centuries, he said quietly. "I've seen empires rise and fall. I've fought wars and built kingdoms. And in all that time, I've never felt like this. Like I'd burn the world to keep you safe. Like every moment I'm not with you is a moment wasted." "Draven, I know it's impossible. I know all the reasons why this can't work. But I'm tired of being logical. Tired of denying what I feel." His eyes searched hers. "Tell me you feel it too. Tell me I'm not imagining this." "You're not," she whispered. "I feel it. I've felt it since you wrapped your cloak around me and promised I was safe. Since you looked at me like I mattered, like I was more than just some random human." Her hand covered his. "But Draven, I'm scared. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to love someone who'll outlive me by centuries." "We'll figure it out," he said. "Together, if you'll have me." "If I'll have you? You're a vampire king. I'm a waitress with student loans and a degree I can't use. You could have anyone." "I don't want anyone," Draven said. "I want you, Ophelia Oakes, who ran from 3 vampires and survived, who made me laugh in the rain, who ordered my guard around like you owned the place, who cares about my well-being even though we've known each other less than 2 days. He leaned forward until their faces were inches apart. "Say yes, please." She closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that was soft and sweet and perfect. Draven's arms came around her, pulling her close, and for a moment the world disappeared. There was only her warmth, her softness, the way she fit against him like she was made to be there. When they finally broke apart, Ophelia was smiling. "That's a yes, in case it wasn't clear." "It was fairly clear," Draven agreed, unable to stop his own smile. "But perhaps you should clarify again, just to be certain." She laughed and kissed him again, and Draven thought that 600 years was worth it if they'd all led to this moment. The next few days passed in a blur of happiness Draven hadn't known he was capable of feeling. Ophelia stayed in the Nightborn realm while Lucian dealt with the captured rogues, and Draven found himself spending every spare moment with her. He showed her the archives, row upon row of books and scrolls collected over centuries. She gasped in delight at the illuminated manuscripts, the ancient texts, the artwork preserved from civilizations long dead. "This is incredible," she breathed, running her fingers over a medieval tapestry. "This should be in a museum." "It would be, if we weren't trying to stay hidden," Draven said. "But when our existence becomes public knowledge, and it will, eventually we'll share all of this. Let human scholars study it. It's too valuable to keep locked away forever." "You really mean that?" "Of course. Knowledge should be shared, not hoarded." He pulled down a book bound in cracked leather. "This is a treatise on vampire biology written 400 years ago by a human physician who befriended our kind. It's one of the only texts of its kind." Ophelia took it reverently. Can I read it? You can have it if you'd like. What? No, I couldn't. I'm the king, Draven said. I can do what I want with our archives, and I want you to have it. Consider it a gift. She looked up at him with shining eyes. You're giving me a 400-year-old book? I'd give you the whole archive if you wanted it. He meant it, he realized. He'd give her anything she asked for. You're too much, she said. But she was smiling as she carefully set the book aside and kissed him. He took her to the training yards, where warriors sparred with swords and practiced ancient forms. Ophelia watched in fascination as Draven demonstrated techniques, moving through forms he'd perfected over centuries. You're beautiful when you fight, she said when he finished. Like a dancer. I'm a killer, Draven corrected. A warrior king. You're both, she said, echoing her earlier words. You can be deadly and beautiful at once. They're not mutually exclusive. He pulled her close, not caring that his warriors were watching. Let them see. Let the whole realm see that he'd found something precious, something worth protecting. You're changing me, he murmured against her hair. Making me soft. Good. You could use some softness. Perhaps, he agreed. Though don't expect me to stop being protective. That's non-negotiable. I wouldn't want you to stop. She pulled back to look at him. I like that you care, that you're willing to fight for me. Always, he promised, for as long as you'll have me. On the third day, Lucienne brought news that the trial of the captured rogues was scheduled for that evening. Standard vampire law required public proceedings for serious crimes, and this was as serious as it got. Do you want to attend? Draven asked Ophelia. You're not required to, but you were their victim. You have a right to see justice done. Ophelia considered. Will it be violent? Possibly. If they're found guilty, and they will be, the sentence is death. Immediate execution. Then I'll come. I want to see it through. The trial was held in the Great Hall, a vast chamber carved from living stone and lit by hundreds of candles. The 7 counselors sat in judgment, with Draven presiding from his throne, a seat of polished obsidian that had belonged to his family for 5 centuries. Ophelia sat beside him in a chair that had been hastily brought in. There had been some murmuring among the counselors about a human attending a vampire trial, but one look at Draven's face had silenced any objections. Kale and Dorian were brought in chains, their defiance replaced by sullen fear. The evidence was presented, testimonies from witnesses, the bodies found at the cannery, Ophelia's own account of the attack. The verdict was unanimous, guilty on all counts. Do you have anything to say before sentence is passed? Draven asked the condemned. Kyle spat at the ground. You're weak, all of you, with your laws and your rules. We're predators. We should take what we want. Then you're no better than animals, Draven said coldly, and animals who threaten the pack are put down. He stood, drawing his sword. For the crimes of murder, feeding without consent, and violation of the blood laws, I sentence you both to permanent death. May you find peace in whatever comes after. The execution was swift. 1 stroke for each rogue, clean and final. Their bodies turned to ash before they hit the floor. Draven returned to his throne, sheathing his sword. Justice is served. This court is dismissed. As the hall emptied, Ophelia turned to him. That's it? It's over? It's over, Draven confirmed. They can't hurt you or anyone else now. I thought I'd feel different. Relieved, maybe, or satisfied. But I just feel... She trailed off. Empty? Draven guessed. That's normal. Vengeance doesn't heal wounds. It just closes a chapter. How do I move forward? 1 day at a time. He took her hand. And not alone. Never alone. She squeezed his fingers. Thank you. For everything. You don't need to thank me. I do, though. You saved my life, gave me shelter, fought for me. You... She paused, searching for words. You made me feel like I mattered, like I was worth protecting. You are worth protecting, Draven said fiercely. You're worth everything. She kissed him then, right there in the great hall with his counselors still lingering, and Draven didn't care. Let them see. Let them know that their king had found something more precious than power or immortality. That night, they talked about the future, about what it would mean for a human and a vampire to be together. "I can't give you immortality," Draven said. "Turning a human requires their consent and a ritual that's incredibly dangerous. Most don't survive it. And even if you did, there's no guarantee you'd remain yourself. The transformation changes people." "I don't want to be a vampire," Ophelia said. "I like being human, flaws and mortality and all." "Then you'll age while I stay the same. You'll have decades and I'll have centuries. Eventually I'll lose you." "Yes," she said softly. "But we'll have those decades together. Isn't that better than nothing?" "My grandfather said the same thing," Draven admitted. "About his human consort, that 40 years with her was worth a century of grief." "And do you believe him?" Draven looked at her, this brave, clever woman who'd stumbled into his life and turned it upside down and knew the answer. "Yes, I believe him, because 3 days with you has been worth 600 years of loneliness." "Only 3 days?" she smiled. "We should probably make sure this is real before we start planning our lives together." "Practical," Draven observed. "I like that about you. Someone has to be practical. You're too busy being romantic and dramatic." "I am a vampire king. Drama comes with the territory." She laughed, and Draven pulled her close, breathing in her scent. "Stay," he said. "Not just for a few more days. Stay here, in the Nightborn realm. Let me court you properly." "Court me?" "Wine you, dine you, shower you with gifts and attention, convince you that spending your life with an ancient vampire is a good idea." He pulled back to look at her. "I know it's fast. I know we barely know each other, but I want to try, if you'll let me." Ophelia bit her lip. "I'd have to quit my job, leave my apartment. My roommate would kill me. I'll compensate your roommate for lost rent, and as for your job..." He paused. "How would you like to curate our archives? Make them accessible to scholars, both vampire and human? It would be a real position, with a salary and everything." Her eyes went wide. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you your dream, or at least a version of it. You wanted to work with art and history. We have centuries of both, just waiting for someone with your expertise." "That's Draven. That's too much." "It's not nearly enough," he said. "But it's a start. Say yes, please." She looked torn, hope and fear warring in her expression. Finally, she said, "What if this doesn't work? What if we're moving too fast and we crash and burn? Then at least we tried. At least we didn't let fear stop us from reaching for something beautiful." He cupped her face in his hands. "I've lived for 6 centuries, Ophelia. I've had relationships, dalliances, even a few I thought might be love. But none of them felt like this. Like I'd finally found the piece of myself I didn't know was missing." "You're making it very hard to say no," she whispered. "Good. That's the plan." She kissed him again, and this time there was promise in it. Promise and heat and a future full of possibilities. "Yes," she said when they broke apart. "Yes to staying. Yes to the job. Yes to you." Draven felt like he could fly. "You won't regret it." "I better not. Because if I do, I know where you live and I'm friends with your healer." He laughed, joy bubbling up from somewhere deep in his chest. "Threatening a vampire king? You're either very brave or very foolish." "Both," Ophelia said. "Definitely both." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of change. Ophelia officially moved into the Nightborn realm, taking up residence in the guest quarters that were quickly becoming her permanent rooms. She gave notice at the restaurant, settled things with her roommate, and packed up her old life to start a new one. The archives became her domain. She spent hours cataloging, organizing, cross-referencing. Draven would find her surrounded by books and scrolls, her hair in a messy knot, ink on her fingers, completely absorbed in her work. "You're beautiful like this," he told her one evening, leaning against the doorframe. She looked up, pushing her reading glasses up her nose. "Like what? Disheveled and covered in dust?" "Happy," he said simply. "You're happy." I am, she admitted. It's everything I wanted. Getting to work with these materials, learning the history, making it accessible. It's perfect. You're perfect, Draven corrected, moving to pull her into his arms. The archives are just lucky to have you. Flatterer. Truth-teller. He kissed the top of her head. Have you eaten today? I think so. That's not an answer. He steered her toward the door. Come, we're taking a break. But I'm in the middle of cataloging the 15th century manuscripts. They've survived 500 years. They can survive another hour. He led her to his private dining room, where a meal was already laid out. Sit, eat. Tell me about your day. She did, animatedly describing her discoveries, and Draven listened with a smile. He loved this, the easy conversation, the shared meals, the way she'd integrated into his life like she'd always been there. His counselors had opinions, of course. At the next council meeting, Seraphine, the eldest counselor, brought it up. My lord, we must discuss your relationship with the human. Must we? Draven asked mildly. She's living in your quarters, working in our archives. The entire realm is talking about her. Let them talk. But my lord, a human consort, it's unprecedented in your reign. My grandfather had a human consort for 40 years, Draven pointed out. Precedent exists. That was different, another counselor, Hadrian, interjected. He was retired, living in the countryside. You're an active king. There are security concerns, political implications. Name one political implication that worries you, Draven said, his voice hardening. The counselors exchanged glances. Finally, Seraphine said, What happens when she ages, when she dies? Will you be able to lead effectively while in mourning? My grandfather did, Draven said. I'll manage. And what if rival courts see this as weakness? Hadrian pressed. What if they use her against you? Then I'll deal with them, the same way I deal with any threat to my realm. Draven leaned forward. Let me be clear. Ophelia Oakes is under my permanent protection. Anyone who harms her, threatens her, or attempts to use her against me will face my wrath. That includes rival courts, rogue vampires, and yes, even members of this council. Is that understood? The counselors nodded, though some looked troubled. Good. Meeting dismissed. As they filed out, Lucien lingered. You've really fallen for her, haven't you? Is it that obvious? You threaten to destroy anyone who harms her. That's fairly telling. Lucian's expression turned serious. But they're not entirely wrong to be concerned. Human-vampire relationships are complicated, dangerous even. I know, Draven said quietly, but I'm tired of living safely, of protecting myself from feeling too much. She's worth the risk. I hope so, Lucian said, for both your sakes. Months passed. Autumn gave way to winter, and the Nightborn realm celebrated the turning of the year with festivals and feasts. Ophelia threw herself into the celebrations, fascinated by the vampire traditions that went back centuries. This is amazing, she said, watching vampires dance in elaborate costumes, their movements graceful and ancient. It's like stepping into history. You're part of that history now, Draven said, pulling her into the dance. Part of our future. She fit into his arms perfectly, following his lead through the complex steps. Around them, the realm watched their king dance with his human, and Draven could see the acceptance in their faces. She'd won them over, with her warmth and her dedication and her genuine interest in their culture. I love you, he said suddenly. The words had been building in him for weeks, and he couldn't hold them back any longer. Ophelia stumbled, and he caught her easily. What? I love you, he repeated. I've loved you since you ordered my guard around like you owned the place, since you kissed me in the Great Hall, since you laughed at my jokes and made me believe that 600 years of loneliness was worth enduring because it led me to you. Tears shone in her eyes. You can't just say things like that in the middle of a dance. Why not? It's true. Because... She laughed, a sound caught between joy and tears. Because I love you too, you impossible vampire, and now I'm crying at a party. Draven stopped dancing, cupping her face in his hands. Say it again. I love you, she whispered. I love you so much it terrifies me." He kissed her then, in front of the entire realm, and the vampires around them burst into applause. When they broke apart, Ophelia was blushing furiously. "Everyone's watching," she hissed. "Let them watch. I want them to know that you're mine, and I'm yours." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Forever, for however long forever means for us." "That's quite a declaration, Your Majesty. I'm quite serious about you, Miss Oakes." She smiled through her tears. "Good, because I'm quite serious about you too." The winter passed into spring, and with it came challenges. A rival vampire court in the southern city began making overtures, testing Draeven's strength. There were skirmishes at the borders of his territory, small probing attacks meant to gauge his response. "They're looking for weakness," Lucian reported. "They think your relationship with Ophelia makes you vulnerable." "Then they're fools," Draeven said. "If anything, she makes me stronger, more determined to protect what's mine." "Perhaps, but they don't see it that way. To them, she's a soft spot, a way to hurt you." Draven's eyes hardened. "Then we'll teach them otherwise. Double the guards on the realm entrances. I want eyes on every access point. And Lucian, put your best people on Ophelia. She's not to go anywhere without protection." "Already done, my lord." "Good." He didn't tell Ophelia about the threats at first, not wanting to worry her, but she noticed the increased security, the way guards shadowed her movements through the realm. "What's going on?" she asked one evening. "Why do I suddenly have bodyguards everywhere I go?" Draven sighed. "There's been some trouble with a rival court. Nothing serious, but I'm taking precautions." "What kind of trouble?" "The kind where they might try to use you to get to me." He pulled her close. "I won't let anything happen to you. I swear it." "I know you won't. But Draven, I don't want to be a weakness for you. I don't want to be the reason you get hurt." "You're not a weakness. You're my strength." He tilted her chin up so she had to meet his eyes. "Yes, loving you gives my enemies a potential target. But it also gives me something to fight for, someone worth protecting. That makes me more dangerous, not less. You really believe that?" "I know it." He kissed her softly. "Trust me. We'll get through this. Together." The attack came 2 weeks later, swift and brutal. A team of assassins breached the realm's defenses, slipping past the guards through a hidden entrance Draven hadn't known existed. They went straight for the archives where Ophelia was working. She heard them coming, the soft whisper of feet on stone, the metallic scent that she'd learned meant vampires. Her heart jumped into her throat. "Guards!" she called, backing toward the far door. "Intruders in the—" One of them appeared in front of her, moving with that impossible vampire speed. He was tall and pale, his eyes gleaming silver. "Hello, little human. You're coming with us." "Like hell I am," Ophelia said, and threw a book at his head. He dodged easily, grinning. "Feisty. The king has good taste." 2 more vampires appeared, flanking her. She was trapped, but she wasn't helpless. Months in the Nightborn realm had taught her a few things. She grabbed a letter opener from the desk silver because Draven kept silver tools in the archives as a security measure and brandished it like a knife. "Stay back," she warned. "I know how to use this." "Do you?" The first vampire laughed. "Because it looks like you're just—" She lunged forward and slashed across his hand. The vampire screamed, his flesh smoking where the silver touched. "I learned from the best," Ophelia said grimly. The other 2 vampires moved in, but before they could reach her, the door exploded inward. Draven stood in the doorway, his eyes blazing with fury, his sword drawn. "Get away from her," he snarled. The assassins turned to face him. "The Vampire King." "Perfect. We'll bring both of you back." Draven moved like death itself. His sword sang through the air and one assassin's head rolled. The second lunged at him, but Draven caught him by the throat and snapped his neck with casual strength. The third tried to run. Draven's blade took him through the heart before he'd gone 2 steps. Silence fell. Draven turned to Ophelia, his rage melting into concern. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine." But she was shaking, adrenaline and fear catching up to her. "They were here for me, to use me against you. And they failed." He crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. "You fought them. You were magnificent. I stabbed one with a letter opener. That's not exactly magnificent. You protected yourself. You didn't freeze or panic. That's everything. He held her tight, and she could feel his heart pounding against her chest. I thought I'd lost you. When I heard the alarm, when I realized they'd gotten to the archives. I'm okay, she whispered. You got here in time. Barely. His voice was rough. This can't continue. They'll keep coming for you as long as they see you as a weakness. So what do we do? Draven pulled back, his eyes searching hers. We remove the weakness. We make you untouchable. How? I marry you, he said. I make you my queen. Once you're officially recognized as my consort, harming you becomes an act of war. No vampire court would risk that. Ophelia stared at him. Is that a proposal? A terrible one, I know. No flowers, no romantic dinner. Just me, covered in the blood of assassins, asking you to tie your life to mine. He managed a shaky smile. What do you say? I say, she laughed, a sound caught between hysteria and joy. I say yes. Obviously yes. He kissed her then, and the terror of the last few minutes faded into the background. There was only him, solid and safe and real. I love you, he murmured against her lips. Forever, however long forever is. I love you too, she said. Forever. The wedding was planned for the following month, giving time for the proper ceremonies and for other vampire courts to be notified. It would be a spectacle, Draven warned her. The first human queen of the Nightborn in 5 centuries. Your grandfather's consort wasn't crowned? Ophelia asked. No. She chose to remain his partner without the formal title. But times were different then. More dangerous for our kind. He wanted to protect her by keeping her out of vampire politics. Draven took her hand. But you don't have that option. The moment you became important to me, you became part of those politics. The crown will protect you in ways nothing else can. I'm going to be a vampire queen, Ophelia said wonderingly. That's insane. You'll be wonderful at it, Draven assured her. You've already won over my people. The coronation is just a formality. The month passed in a blur of preparations. Ophelia was fitted for a dress white silk and silver thread, traditional for a Nightborn queen. She learned the ceremony, the vows that were older than most human nations. She met with counselors and diplomats, learning the intricacies of vampire politics. It was overwhelming and exhilarating and terrifying all at once. The night before the wedding, she couldn't sleep. She stood in her rooms, soon to be their rooms, once they were married, looking at the dress hanging in the corner. A knock came at the door. Draven stepped inside, looking concerned. Can't sleep? Too many thoughts. She turned to him. Are you sure about this? It's not too late to change your mind. I've never been more sure of anything in 600 years, Draven said. He crossed to her, taking her hands. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Tomorrow, I get to spend the rest of your life proving that to you. The rest of my life, she echoed, which is a blink compared to yours. Then we'll make every moment count. He pulled her close. No regrets, Ophelia. Not now, not ever. She rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. I wish I could give you forever. Real forever. You're giving me everything that matters, Draven said softly. Your time, your love, your trust. That's more than I ever thought I'd have. Promise me something, she said. When I'm gone, when my time is up, promise you'll keep living, keep ruling. Don't lock yourself away like your grandfather did. Ophelia, promise me, Draven, please. He was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he said, I promise. For you, I'll keep going. Good. She looked up at him. Now kiss me. It's bad luck to see the bride before the wedding, but I don't care. Since when do you care about human superstitions? Since never. Now stop talking and kiss me. He did, and for a while there was no tomorrow. Only the present, only them. The wedding was everything Ophelia could have hoped for, and nothing like she'd expected. The ceremony took place in the great hall, lit by thousands of candles. Every vampire in the realm attended, along with representatives from allied courts. Draven wore formal armor, black and silver, looking every inch the warrior king. Ophelia wore her dress of white and silver, her dark hair crowned with a circlet of diamonds that had belonged to Draven's grandmother. They stood before the assembled court, and the efficient and ancient vampire, older even than Draven, began the ceremony. We gather to witness the joining of King Draeven Falkren and Ophelia Oakes, a union between vampire and human, between immortal and mortal, between night and day. The officiant's voice rang through the hall. Do you, Draven, take this woman as your consort, your queen, your chosen one? Do you vow to protect her, cherish her, love her for all the days of her life? I do, Draven said, his voice steady and strong. And do you, Ophelia, take this vampire as your partner, your king, your chosen one? Do you vow to stand beside him, support him, love him for all the days of your life? I do, Ophelia said, meaning it with every fiber of her being. Then by the ancient laws of our kind, I declare you bound, king and queen united in partnership. The officiant smiled. You may seal your vows. Draven pulled her close and kissed her, and the hall erupted in cheers. Ophelia laughed against his lips, overwhelmed by the noise and the joy and the sheer impossibility of this moment. My queen, Draven murmured. My love. My king, she said back. My heart. The celebration lasted until dawn, with music and dancing and toasts in Ophelia's honor. She was overwhelmed by the warmth of the Nightborn, by the way they welcomed her as one of their own. You've made our king happy, Serena told her during a quiet moment. That's no small feat. He's been alone for so long. He makes me happy too, Ophelia said. I never thought I'd find this, love like this. Treasure it, Serena advised. These moments are precious, all the more so because they're finite. It was a sobering thought, but Ophelia refused to let it dampen her joy. She had decades ahead of her, decades to spend with Draven. That was more than most people got. As the celebration wound down, Draven swept her into his arms. Ready to retire, my queen? Eager to get me alone, your majesty? Always. He carried her out of the hall to the sound of laughter and applause. Their chambers, truly their chambers, now were filled with candles and flowers. Draven set her down gently, his eyes full of love. Thank you, he said softly, for choosing me, for giving me this. Thank you for finding me, Ophelia said, for wrapping your cloak around me, for making me feel safe. Always, he promised. For as long as I live, you'll be safe, loved, cherished. She pulled him down for a kiss, and the rest of the night was theirs alone. The years that followed were the happiest of Ophelia's life. She threw herself into her work, creating a comprehensive catalog of the archives and beginning the process of opening them to select human scholars. It was delicate work, requiring secrecy and careful vetting, but slowly, the knowledge of the Nightborn began to filter into the human world. You're building a bridge, Draven told her one evening, watching her work. Between our kinds, that's no small thing. Someone has to, Ophelia said. We can't stay hidden forever. Eventually, humans will discover vampires exist. When that happens, it's better if we already have relationships, understanding, trust. You're thinking long-term. Someone has to, she repeated. You'll be here long after I'm gone. I want to leave something behind, something that will help you. Draven pulled her into his arms. You're helping me every day, just by being here. Flatterer. Truth-teller. He kissed the top of her head. I love you. I love you too. 5 years after their wedding, Ophelia made a discovery that changed everything. She was cataloging a collection of texts from the early days of the Nightborn realm when she found a journal written in Draven's grandfather's hand. In it, he detailed his relationship with his human consort, including a ritual that could extend a human's lifespan without turning them into a vampire. Ophelia stared at the pages, her heart pounding. This can't be real. But the more she read, the more convinced she became. The ritual was complex, requiring rare ingredients and powerful magic. But it was possible. A human could live for centuries, aging slowly, without losing their humanity. She took the journal to Draeven that night. He read it in silence, his expression growing more and more intent. "I didn't know this existed," he said finally. "My grandfather never mentioned it. Maybe he didn't think it worked. Or maybe," Ophelia paused, "maybe his consort chose not to use it. Why wouldn't she? I don't know. Fear, uncertainty. Maybe she didn't want to live for centuries." Ophelia took a breath. "But I do. If this is real, if it works, Draeven, I could have hundreds of years with you, not just decades." His eyes met hers, hope and fear warring in their depths. "It's dangerous. The journal says the ritual fails more often than it succeeds." "Everything worth having is dangerous," Ophelia said. "You taught me that." "Ophelia, I want this," she said firmly. "I want time with you, real time, centuries, not decades. If there's a chance, I have to take it." Draeven was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he said, "Then we'll try, but carefully. We'll research every aspect of the ritual, make sure we understand it completely, and if at any point it seems too dangerous, we stop." "Agreed." "Agreed." It took 2 years to prepare. They gathered ingredients from across the world, herbs that grew only under moonlight, crystals formed in volcanic caves, water from sacred springs. They consulted with ancient vampires who remembered the old magics. They practiced the ritual again and again, perfecting every gesture and word. And finally, on a night when the moon was dark and the stars were bright, they performed it. Ophelia lay on an altar of stone, dressed in white, her hands clasped over her chest. Draeven stood over her, his hands glowing with silver light, speaking words in a language older than civilization. The magic flowed through her like liquid fire, burning and transforming. She could feel her body changing, cells rearranging, time itself bending around her. It hurt, gods, it hurt, but she clenched her teeth and endured. And then it was over. The light faded. The pain vanished. Draeven caught her as she sat up, his face pale with concern. "Are you all right? Did it work?" "I don't know. I feel—" Ophelia paused, trying to articulate the sensation. "Different, stronger, but still me." "Your heartbeat," Draeven said wonderingly. "It's slower, steadier, more like—" "More like a vampire's?" Ophelia finished. "Not quite, but closer, longer lived." He pulled her close. "I think it worked." Over the following weeks, the changes became more apparent. Ophelia's healing accelerated. She could go longer without sleep, without food. Her senses sharpened, though not to vampire levels. And most importantly, she stopped aging. Or rather, she aged so slowly, it was imperceptible. "The ritual worked," Serena confirmed after examining her. "You're not vampire, not quite human, something in between. A hybrid of sorts." "How long will I live?" Ophelia asked. "Centuries if you're lucky, perhaps longer. The magic is powerful, and you're strong." Serena smiled. "Congratulations, Your Majesty. You've bought yourself time." Ophelia threw her arms around Draeven, laughing and crying at once. "We have time, real time." "Centuries of it," Draeven agreed, holding her tight. "I can't believe this is real." "Believe it," Ophelia said. "You're stuck with me now." Best news I've ever received. The years that followed proved the ritual's success. 10 years after the ceremony, Ophelia looked exactly as she had on her wedding day. 20 years, and she'd only aged a handful of years physically. The human lifespan that should have been measured in decades was now measured in centuries. "I was thinking," she said one evening, 40 years after they'd married. They were in their private chambers, curled up together by the fire. "Maybe it's time we had a family." Draeven looked at her in surprise. "A family? You mean a child? Children, maybe?" She smiled at his shocked expression. "I know it's complicated. I'm not fully human anymore, but I'm not vampire either. I don't know if it's even possible." Serena would know, Draven said slowly. She could tell us if it's viable. They consulted with the healer the next day. Serena examined Ophelia carefully, using magic to probe deep. It's possible, she said finally. Difficult, perhaps, but possible. The ritual changed you, but you're still capable of bearing children. She looked between them. Is this something you truly want? Yes, Ophelia said immediately. I want a family with Draven. I want to build a future, not just for us, but for the next generation. Then I'll help in any way I can, Serena promised. 2 years later, Ophelia was pregnant. The pregnancy was difficult. Her hybrid physiology made everything unpredictable, but Serena monitored her carefully, and 9 months after that, on a cool autumn evening, Ophelia gave birth to a son. He was perfect, tiny and squalling, with a shock of white hair and silver eyes. A vampire child, but with Ophelia's features, her smile. Xander, Draven said, cradling his son with infinite gentleness. His name is Xander. Xander Falkren, Ophelia agreed. Our son. The Nightborn realm celebrated for a week. A heir to the throne, the firstborn to a ruling king in 3 centuries. It was momentous, historic. But for Draven and Ophelia, it was simply perfect. They had each other, they had time, and now they had a family. Remember when I found you between those barrels? Draven said one night, watching Ophelia nurse their son. You were trembling, bleeding, terrified. And you wrapped your cloak around me, Ophelia finished. Promised I was safe. And I've spent every day since making sure that promise holds true. You have, she agreed. You've given me everything. Safety, love, time, family. A life I never dreamed possible. You've given me more, Draven said. You've given me hope. A future that isn't just endless centuries of duty and loneliness. You've given me joy. Then we're even, Ophelia said, smiling up at him. Never even. I'll spend eternity trying to deserve you. You already do. Xander made a small sound, and they both turned their attention to him. Their son, their miracle. 3 years later, a daughter was born, Vivian, with Ophelia's dark hair and Draven's silver eyes. She was fierce and clever from the start, already showing signs of vampire strength and human warmth. 2 children, Ophelia marveled. We have 2 perfect children. We're blessed beyond measure, Draven agreed. The years continued to pass, marked by joy and love and the small moments that made a life. Xander grew into a thoughtful boy, showing interest in his father's rulership. Vivian was wild and free, forever exploring the realm and getting into mischief. She's going to be trouble, Lucian observed one day, watching the 5-year-old Vivian charm a group of guards into letting her practice with their swords. She's brilliant, Draven corrected. Just like her mother. Ophelia, standing beside him, laughed. I was never that bold. You stabbed an assassin with a letter opener. You're plenty bold. 50 years after their wedding, the Nightborn realm had transformed. The archives were now open to select human scholars, creating a tentative bridge between the species. Other vampire courts had begun following Draven's example, establishing their own protocols for human interaction. You're changing the world, Draven told Ophelia, making it better. We're changing it, she corrected. Together. They stood on a balcony overlooking the realm, their home, their life. Below them, vampires and humans mingled, working together, learning from each other. It was everything Ophelia had dreamed of. Do you ever regret it? Draven asked. Choosing this life? Never, Ophelia said immediately. Not for a second. You? Asking you to stay with me was the best decision I've made in 650 years, Draven said. Everything good in my life stems from that moment in the alley, when I found you trembling between those barrels and wrapped my cloak around you. And promised I was safe, Ophelia finished. And meant it, Draven said. With everything I am. She leaned into his embrace, feeling his arms come around her. Safe. Loved. Home. Forever, she whispered. Forever, he agreed. However long forever is, it's yours. All of it. and as the candles flickered and the realm settled into the quiet of evening, two hearts beat in sync, one human turned hybrid, one vampire king united by a love that defied time itself. Years continued to unfold like pages in a beloved book. Xander grew into a young man, tall and serious, with his father's strategic mind and his mother's compassion. He trained as a warrior and diplomat both, preparing for the day when he might rule. Vivian remained wild-hearted but brilliant, eventually discovering a gift for magic that surprised everyone. Serena took her on as an apprentice, teaching her the healing arts. "I never imagined this," Ophelia said one evening, watching her children spar in the training yard. They moved with vampire grace and human heart, the perfect blend of both their parents. "Imagined what?" Draeven asked, coming up behind her. "Having a family, growing old or not old, I suppose, with someone I love, building a life that matters." She turned to face him. "Being happy." "You deserve happiness," Draeven said. "You've always deserved it. So do you." She reached up to touch his face, tracing the sharp lines she'd memorized over decades. "Thank you for finding me that night, for saving me." "You saved me first," Draeven said. "I just didn't know I needed saving until I met you." 100 years after their wedding, a milestone that should have been impossible but felt perfectly natural, the Nightborn realm hosted a celebration. Vampires came from allied courts across the world. Human scholars and diplomats attended as well, marking how far relations between the species had come. "A century of marriage," the officiant said, the same ancient vampire who had married them. "A century of love between mortal and immortal. You have proven what many thought impossible, that such a union can not only survive, but thrive." Ophelia and Draeven stood before the assembled crowd, hands clasped, still as in love as they'd been on their wedding day. "What's your secret?" someone called from the crowd. "How do you make it work?" Draeven looked at Ophelia, and she smiled at him. "Communication," she said. "Honesty, willingness to adapt and grow together." "And remembering why we fell in love in the first place," Draeven added. "Those first moments, the fear and the hope and the choice to trust, we revisit them regularly, remind ourselves of where we started." "Also, he's very romantic," Ophelia added, drawing laughter from the crowd. "That helps." "She's very patient," Draeven countered. "That helps more." The celebration continued late into the night. Xander and Vivian gave toasts that made both their parents tear up. Friends and allies shared stories and well wishes. It was perfect. But the most perfect moment came later, when Draeven and Ophelia were alone in their chambers, the celebration winding down outside. 100 years, Ophelia said, wonder in her voice. "We've been together for a century." "And we have centuries more," Draeven said. "The ritual worked better than we could have hoped. Serena says you might live as long as a vampire, perhaps longer." "Then I get to spend eternity annoying you," Ophelia teased. "I'm counting on it." He pulled her close. "I love you, now and always." "I love you too, forever." They kissed, and it felt like the first time and the 1,000th time all at once, familiar and new, comfort and passion, home and adventure. Outside their window, the Nightborn realm glittered in the candlelight. Inside, a vampire king and his hybrid queen held each other close, grateful for every moment, every year, every century they'd been given. It had started with a girl trembling between barrels and a vampire wrapping her in his cloak. It had grown into a love that defied nature itself, that bridged species and lifespans and every logical reason it shouldn't work. But it did work. Against all odds, despite every obstacle, through time and trial and transformation, it worked. Because some loves are meant to be. Some souls are meant to find each other. And some promises, like the one Draeven made that rainy night when he swore she'd be safe, are meant to last forever. The years stretched ahead of them, full of possibility and promise. Xander would eventually take the throne, ruling with wisdom learned from both his parents. Vivian would become one of the realm's most powerful healers, using her unique hybrid magic to bridge vampire and human medicine. But that was all in the future. For now, in this moment, Draven and Ophelia had each other, had their family, their realm, their love. And that was everything. "Tell me again," Ophelia whispered, "about the night you found me." "You were trembling between the barrels," Draven said, the story as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. "Scared and bleeding, and I knew, the moment I saw you, that my life was about to change. And you wrapped your cloak around me and promised you'd be safe. And you kept that promise. Always," Draven said. "For 100 years I've kept it. For however many centuries remain, I'll keep it still." "My king," Ophelia said softly. "My queen," he replied. "My heart, my home." And in the quiet of their chambers, surrounded by the realm they'd built and the family they'd created, two souls found peace in each other's arms. It was the ending of their story and the continuation of it, all at once. Because true love doesn't end, it simply grows, deepens, transforms into something richer and more beautiful with time. And theirs had all the time in the world. Forever, after all, was theirs. The end of fear and the beginning of everything that mattered. The end of loneliness and the start of belonging. The end of one life and the flourishing of another, better, shared. A vampire king and his human-turned hybrid queen, together against everything, surviving and thriving through love. It was, in the end, exactly the happy ending they deserved. And it was real.